We're coming up to one of the most anticipated Gallagher Premiership finals in recent memory, as Bath and Northampton are set to go toe-to-toe in a bid to end their respective trophy droughts. Joining myself in the full house of columnists today to preview that game is TNT Premiership Rugby and European Champions Cup anchor Craig Doyle. We are just over 24 hours out from the Gallagher Premiership final. Our predictions were pretty solid for last week, actually. I think two of us went for Sale, 2 out of 5. But other than that, all 5 of us were spot on with our Northampton Bath predictions. Chewy's looking smug. Well, I'll be honest, I can't remember what you said.
No, I went for Sale. How can that be solid? There are only 2 calls to make, and I got one of them wrong.
Yeah, I know. But you're usually
not solid.
You weren't. So you're usually a caveat to our predictions.
And well, I like to be different.
Yeah, well, exactly. So you'll be voting Tory then, I presume.
I'll tell you what, you weren't.
I won't be that different.
You weren't that far wrong though, because at one stage it looked as if what you were saying about the Sale pack, when they got the driving maul going forward,
yeah,
it actually looked as if they might have found something that they could really squeeze Bath on.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, Niall Annett turned the tables on them. I tell you what, that bloke's been a great. He's the great unsung signing, really.
Yeah.
I think
he is a brilliant 25-minute player, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I think
they would done that. Hello, Craig.
What have I just joined?
Yeah, what have you just joined?
Yeah, you said you'd be early, so we've been doing this since 8 a.m.
What's Niall Annett's greatest claim to fame?
Comes from Ulster.
No, he got a yellow card before actually making his debut for Bath. He got carded from the touchline before he came on.
You're right, he did, yes. Yes. Good knowledge. He did.
I cried laughing.
What did he get carded for? Can you remember?
He got carded because it's disputing a decision. It's like the time. It's my second favorite rugby memory. My first one was when they brought in tactical substitutions, and Ireland were playing in Lansdowne Road, and Niall Hogan got subbed, got taken off after about 48 minutes or something like that, and gave him the off you come, and he held his hamstring and hobbled off, and they went, leaving the pitch, Niall Hogan, tactical substitution.
Dr. Niall Hogan is a legend. I went with him on a London Irish Army weekend, SAS thing, and they had this, the old complicated getting over the river with the brick bridges and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And he came up with 4 ways you could do it, and the army had only ever worked out 2 themselves. And in half an hour, him and his team came up with 4 different ways to get these boxes aligned the right way to get the chicken over the other side or whatever they had to do.
I tell you something, he's a good fella now for a little knee injection. I'll be calling him next week for a little injection in the old knees. He's your guy, knees and shoulders.
I think we could do with him.
Great to see you, Craig. I take it you're not in Italy anymore, or if you are, you've got the entire rugby stash with you.
I know. I've been doing a little smash and grab all morning for Stena Line, telling people the virtues. Brendan, you'd appreciate this. The virtues of getting the ferry from Ireland to England. So and they're like, I just had to make the place not look like the kids' homework room.
Oh, it looks great.
Is it not more difficult since Brexit? Did you mention that?
No, we're in the common travel area. So yeah. You're the kind of people
trying to drag you into the political waters. Don't worry, Chris.
4 minutes, 15 seconds, and we're into politics with Chewy.
Well, no, but you managed to shut Chewy up there with one sentence. It was quite
well. I don't think he was a Brexit voter.
No. I was saying just before you logged on, I do like to be different and do things that no one else is going to do. So just this year, I might vote for Rishi Sunak.
Oh, don't be. Oh my God! What an unbelievably stupid faux pas yesterday. Like, how stupid and disconnected is that man?
Yeah. He turns a win-win into a lose-lose. I mean, you spend 36 hours, with the great and good, photo opportunities, Britain's finest moment. What do? You bugger off home.
And don't worry, Nick. You can still vote for reform. You'll be all right.
Anyway, rugby.
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 Is that
close
Mr.
door before it
Momentum?
let's close that door before it gets too wide open.
Give me 1 second. Let me 1 second. I just got to make sure the dogs can get out so they don't come in a noise. 1 second.
No worries. No worries. Solidar. I can't even read that.
What's Polish?
Oh, well, no wonder I can't read it then. I don't speak that language. Lovely, Chewy. Thanks for that.
You see, you're too young ever to have heard of Solidarność.
Everyone on YouTube now wishes.
Lech Walesa, eh?
Indeed.
Lech Hewett.
Indeed.
I
mean, I know you weren't really fond of unions, Nick, but they were on the side of the Angels, weren't they?
What? On the side of the Angels, Mr. Tall Puddle? I think not.
Oh, guys. No.
Anyone who's going to bring down the Soviet Union, I would have thought would have got your imprimatur.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes, all right. No question.
I'll tell you what, if you're listening at home, you're still listening at home and you're under the age of 30, I salute you, or you might need to get your brain checked. Because I think any 30-year-old would have switched off by this point, but hopefully you're still with us. Craig, where were you in Italy out of interest?
I was in Lake Maggiore.
Where's that?
It is about an hour from Milan. It's about 45 minutes north of, it's right on the border with Switzerland. Okay. Oh my God, lads, honestly, do it. Like, forget your Lake Comos and all that lark, which is really expensive. This place was beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, where were you?
Well, I was in Naples, which was also equally cheap and equally beautiful. So we did Sorrento and we did a little bit along Amalfi and all that. It was very, very nice.
Well, the cost of living crisis has really walloped you guys.
Hey, I was getting paid to be there. Make it worse. I was getting paid.
I wasn't.
Sorrento and Amalfi is not exactly the heart of Naples.
No, well, all right. We did. Speaking of ferries, lovely little ferry down there. It was very, very easy. And I tell you, it was so cheap. All of it was so cheap. So it was a lovely little getaway.
Really?
We are, yeah. I mean, most I paid was £5 for a pizza. It was unbelievable. So yeah, would recommend. Let's talk about rugby, shall we? As we've done politics, Sunak,
yes.
So rugby. We've kind of already introduced our special guest, but it is TNT's main anchor for Premiership Rugby and European Champions Cup Rugby, Craig Doyle. I know your life's carnage, so massively appreciate you being here. Presumably, you're off to HQ tomorrow.
I am, yeah. No, this is great, actually. I'm in the mood for this. I'm in the mood for just a big rugby chat. I've been doing lots of other bits and bobs. And I'm looking at the wise owls you have there. So this is good. This will save. I'll have to do no homework for the game tomorrow. I'll get everything I need from this brains trust.
just make sure you reference us on TV tomorrow.
You got it. You got it.
A fact check at the end as well, Craig.
We should also fact check our semi-final predictions as well, Craig.
Oh, really? I was disgusted to see Austin Healy predicted the final.
Oh, did he?
Out of our group, yeah.
What were did you do one?
Yeah, I just thought Saints Sarries. This is way back. I felt Saints had it in them, but it's weird. Sarries, it's been weird watching Saracens. I don't know. I haven't loved it, actually.
No.
I made me feel sad. I can't explain it.
I mean, that game was obviously on a knife edge. It was almost fitting that Courtney Laws was the man to step up. And yeah, I think for all love nor money, he was not letting go of that ball at the end. But obviously you were working 10 years ago when he played in his first Gallagher Premiership Final. Things have sort of come full circle. So
yeah, and 10 years ago, only Irish teams were winning matches with a choke tackle. So it was nice to see it's finally been taken on board in the Premiership. Yeah, that was an extraordinary final 10 years ago, wasn't it? I mean, they usually are. I can't recall one that's disappointed me. They're usually big occasions, aren't they? And more than that, the games are usually fit for purpose. But
I don't remember Leeds Bath being a classic, but that might have been before your time.
Don't remember Leeds being in a final.
Was it something like 10-6?
Oh, no, really?
That was Wasps Bath. A week after Wasps had beaten Toulouse at Twickenham. So
I think the Leeds Bath game was in the Pilkington Cup. Actually,
I think it was.
I think that's the truth. This is before the age of Premiership finals, probably.
Yes, probably. Yeah, Leeds. I used to love going up to Leeds,
which we all moaned about, or a lot of us moaned about the idea of a Premiership final. Back in the day,
really.
we all thought the football model, etc., etc. If you won the league over 22 games or 24 games or however many it was back in the day, the title was yours, and that this thing was an unnecessary sort of affectation, blah, 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 blah. It's now rooted in the game, and it has been for many, many moons. I mean, could you imagine a domestic season without a Premiership final?
I think, I can't imagine it, and I don't think it would be as good. I loved the semi-finals this year. I thought they're absolutely brilliant. And what a great showcase for the league after all the turbulent times we've had. And I felt very proud of it, particularly when I come home to Ireland and people are looking for reasons to slag it off. And I go, watch the semis back and then come and have a chat with me. Watch what it looks like when, a city plays a city, or when there's deep hatred between sides, proper hatred. And look what happens. It's the best thing you'll see. And I thought the semi-finals were absolutely fabulous. It's funny, isn't it, though, with this, like, I don't feel any anger or hatred in this final. The relationship between the two teams. Do you know what I mean? This is kind of got
similar, aren't they? In the way they play and entertain, and the neutral. This is the final for the neutral, isn't it?
I agree. There's a joy to it, isn't there? There's a joy to this matchup. It really is. But no, I think so. How far out would Saints have won the league if it was top of the table wins?
Oh, crikey!
3 weeks ago. 3
Oh, at least. I mean, back in the day when this stuff came through, Leicester were very strong at that point. I mean, you remember that, Nick, I guess, and they were sort of winning the league in January, weren't they? Yeah. January, February, it was effectively done and dusted. So I can see the logic of saying, look, this is all a little bit early.
But also, Saints might have taken the foot off the pedal. You got Europe. It allows them to also, it allows them to go for two objects, doesn't it? If they want to go for Europe as well, they took the foot off the pedal a couple of times in the last month, didn't they? And lost games that they might not have lost had it had been the league title at stake.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a better format. It's just a better format. And tomorrow's a good day. Like the final's a good day. And I always say it. I don't mean it to sound as cliche as I do when I say it on telly, but like there's jerseys from all over the place. There's jerseys from way down the league ranks as well. It's just it is a celebration of rugby, and it's a very special thing that should be protected.
What's your favourite final that you've ever covered? You mentioned the one from 10 years ago. Quinn's win from 2021 sticks to memory, obviously.
Quinn's win was really good. Quinn's first win with Conor O'Shea in charge. I loved that. I loved him all season. I loved his attitude, the way he stuck to the way they played. I was just really pleased for him. I do think 10 years ago there was so much drama in that final. There was loads of little moments, wasn't there? Wasn't that the one with the weird Stephen Myler moment? There was just loads of weird stuff happened in the game. And that was a great final.
One of the Saracens Exeter finals was a fantastic final as well.
The 37-34, wasn't it? I think it wasn't many seasons ago.
And also the one with Wasps in when they should have won it at the end, wasn't it?
Oh, the line out.
Yeah.
Oh,
stop. Together. That could have changed the history of that club if they could have had that as a launching pad.
They lost the line out, didn't they? More or less on their line. Oh. Yeah. Hard to beat, though. Hard to beat the romance of the Freddie Burns drop goal.
Yeah. Just as an individual moment, rather than the final. I mean, the final was a good final, but in terms of, like you say, weird stuff happening, it probably didn't have that. But in terms of an iconic moment, I'd imagine, I wasn't there myself, but that probably sticks long in the memory.
It was the way it juxtapositioned to the moment in Europe when the ball was knocked out of his hands behind the post, and those things we love about sport. If you love the romance of sport, the being able to fix things and make the story right, and just all that stuff, ridding yourself of demons, and it was just a great moment,
Was it the Northampton Saracens final that went to extra time and went? That was the final. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I usually am, so get ready with your corrections. But was that not the final where Owen Farrell scored an early try, banged the ball into the crowd in celebration, went down with a knackered hamstring, and while he was being treated, the TMO had a very long look at the try and decided there was a forward pass in him. So I don't think Owen has ever repeated that. I don't think he kicks the ball in triumph in the crowd anymore. But that was an extraordinary moment, because Saracens, I mean, from there could have, the whole game would have been different, you imagine. So
there's usually not much between the sides in the final, though, and rightly so.
No.
Yeah.
No.
There are two extra times, I think. That one and Wasps Exeter was extra time as well.
Yeah.
Are we podcasting right now?
Yeah.
Is this it? Is this it?
Yeah. Sorry.
It's it. I like it.
So I started the recording already.
Is it not high tech enough for you, Craig?
You do have the headphones and the mic.
Flouncing in 5 minutes late, pretend. and then sort of basically say, what am I doing talking to this rabble?
The hell am I doing this for?
Anyway, it's nice to see you, Craig.
Oh dear. Well, we mentioned.
I miss you.
Yeah.
Actually, just
they're all so young and nice out there at the moment.
Oh. He wants some old dogs, don't
I want the old dogs back. I'll tell you something, Chris. I have to say, Chris, when I started doing rugby, and I'd walk into I just come off the travel show, and everyone thought I was an idiot, and I'm like, Charlie Sale was so rude to me. He'd put his foot up against doors and wouldn't let me. I mean, he was dreadful. I'm doing a British Open, and I walked in front of other journalists. He goes, "What are you doing here?" And I had no answer. To him. Chris was always so nice to me and so welcoming. I'll never forget it, because the fear when you walk in and to a room full of people you've been reading and listening to for years and years, you're always so very kind, when I got to know you,
it wasn't because I liked you, Craig. It was because I always wanted to do the opposite of what the Daily Mail was doing.
I'm surprised you didn't tell Charlie Sale to get back in his box, Craig.
I did actually. I did after he he apologized to me years later. I did the boat race, and I met him at the launch of BT 11 years ago. And I there was a coach going. There was the whole setup at TNT at BT was mad. You had to get a bus to the tube, and anyway, they were shipping a load of us from the launch back to the tube. And I got on this coach, and there must have been 12 people on the coach. There was 60 spare seats, but I sat beside him. I went, "Hello, do you know me?" And he went, "I'm really sorry." I went, "Okay, why are you sorry?" And he was actually all right.
Yeah, good old Charlie, bless him.
Yeah.
Come on, Oliver.
Yeah, sorry. Where's
our adjudicator?
Well, I was just letting the floor have it, to be honest.
One point we need to make.
Sorry, go on, Brendan.
Well, we're talking about this final feeling a bit different. I think I read this morning it's the first final without either Exeter or Saracens for 11 years, 11 seasons. Well, since, and that is huge, because magnificent as those teams are, they've sort of dominated the narrative totally.
Yeah.
And to get that new impetus, I think is going to, well, it's sold out by Sunday afternoon, didn't it? I mean, this is the match people want to watch. It's got that little bit of X factor.
Yeah.
There are a couple of narratives, aren't there? I mean, there's that. There's Saints looking for the first in 10 years, Bath looking for the first in 30. Obviously, they're both playing with a bit between the teeth. But even 2 seasons ago, neither of these sides were competitive. And obviously, we have a massive Bath following at the Rugby Paper. And even when this podcast started 2 and a bit years ago, I think our first Bath player we had on was Max Ajomo. And it was before he'd broken into the first team in the way that he now has. Obviously, their midfield with Ajomo, Redpath, Lawrence is bloody competitive, but he's blossomed into a fantastic player. And he sort of held a beacon in our eyes almost, because he was that generation. And obviously, Finn Russell's helped unlock it, as has the likes of Ollie Lawrence and Ted Hill. But Craig, hasn't it been great to see a very almost linear progression, and then the signing of Russell seemed to spark an explosion in Bath, and that's what we've seen this season in particular.
Yeah, I was wondering, are they ahead of schedule a little bit? this year. But then I think, you look at Ollie Lawrence and what he's been doing, and I know Finn Russell has been unbelievable for them. I really do, but I think they were right on the edge of it with a couple of their players anyway, who were just really, you talk about Max Ajomo and some of these guys in Redpath, they were very, very young. They were like lambs to the slaughter when they made their debuts at Bath, and they did need just a few hours on the clock, didn't they? A few miles on the clock. I would argue Ollie Lawrence has been the most important player they've brought in. He's brought that stability and allows things function around him. He's got a real clear head in those stressful situations. When we see Ted Hill on there, I just think he's phenomenal. Actually, I don't think we give either sides enough credit for what they do up front. We talk about their exciting backlines, but actually
the story is with Bath, and it's a difference maker. Out of everyone, they've done really well. And I'm not being disparaging at all. I mean, I'm born and bred there, but they've done incredibly well out of the insolvencies. They have. The people they brought in have been real difference makers.
Yeah.
So okay, Russell's a big marquee signing, that's great. But if you look at Hill, you look at Barbary, you look at somebody like Van Veltzer, Niall Annett, and then obviously you've got Ollie Lawrence and Ted Hill. Who are terrific players. They're international quality players. So they've done really well, and they've also brought in for the first time in a long time, they've brought in the absolute right coach for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and he's been extraordinarily effective. I think he knows what he's doing. That bloke, he really
missed one guy out because last season they, apart from the end, they really weren't at the races, and I think that the key thing, and probably the key man, I agree about the Worcester guys. I think that they've come through like a storm this season. They were finding their way a little bit last season. But the guy who's made a huge difference is Thomas Dutoy.
Mm.
He's made a massive difference. And because Bath didn't have a pack, really. Last season their pack was putty, compared to those at the top of the table. And that's why they were in the fix that they were in many ways. So it's what they've done, what having a real anchor tight head has done for them. And Underhill has come back, and he's a hell of a player. And he's come back to getting close to his best form. So, they've now got Charlie Ewells is playing better than he's played for years. They've now got players who have sort of built around that framework up front. And
you will notice, Craig, as this conversation unfolds, that Nick Cain likes a prop.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah.
He does like a prop. Because if you ask Nick Cain, what's your favourite brand of peanut butter, he would say Tighthead.
And yours would be Loosehead, mate.
Brendan's would be Hooker.
but really, I think that's the difference. And if they win it on Saturday, that will be the difference again. But they're going to have to go some.
Well,
I hear all you're saying, Nick, but I think we shouldn't underplay the Finn Russell influence. When he signed, I put my hand up. I didn't think it was going to work. Certainly not in the first year.
Nor did I.
I thought there'd be no pre-season training with the club. He'd be away with Scotland. He'd come back from the World Cup either knackered, battered up, disillusioned, or whatever. And I thought this is going to take time. We might see a few results at the end of the season, teeing up next season. He's arrived up and running. He's thrown his hat into the ring. He didn't miss a match that he didn't have to miss. He really put his body on the line. And he was just the catalyst. And I think he gave the crowd hope. And once you get that Bath crowd going, they're a fantastic home support. And he was the catalyst for all those other exceptionally good players who are all coming through. So I was definitely wrong. He's been a magnificent signing. If you're going to have a marquee signing, make it a Finn Russell signing. He's been superb.
You always know, Bren, when Bath are playing well, when the crowd throw their hummus in the air.
I tell you what, I love what Finn's done as well. He's given Ben Spencer, he's relieved a bit of pressure off Ben Spencer, and Ben Spencer has looked absolutely fabulous this season. But I tell you, the relationship that surprised me with Finn Russell is Finn Russell and Johan van Graan, because from what I'd heard about Munster, I just wasn't sure how that was going to work. you know, not peas in a pod by any means, right? Very, very different characters. They like to do things very, very differently. And, you know, things weren't brilliant at Munster, let's be honest, in the last couple of years of Johan. My word, that has just blossomed, hasn't it? And we should mention the third party who gets no credit is JP Ferreira, who they loved in Munster. The hard lads in Munster thought he was fantastic and he gave them a real hard edge. That whole relationship, wow, phenomenal.
Well, Russell outplayed his way last weekend, but he kicked his goals.
Yeah.
And they weren't easy. They weren't easy. And that, you know, I mean, you wouldn't always ordinarily back Russell to kick everything in sight.
But he's been good this season. He's been very good.
He has. But that was a pressure game with difficult kicks at very sort of sensitive moments in the match. And he nailed the stuff. And he also and his scrambling defence, you know, is pretty damn good for a fancy down.
It's acceptable.
It is really good for a fancy down.
But I mean, talking about it all coming together on the coaching front, one of the people who I think also deserves a mention, because everywhere he seems to go as an attack coach, he seems to bring a sprinkling of stardust, is Lee Blackett.
Yeah.
You know, they're a much better, a much more coherent attacking side than they have been for obviously years. So all round it just seems to it does look like a weird amalgam in some ways. Van Gran, Russell, Blackett, etc. But it has worked.
It suits Lee to be just focused on that job, doesn't it? And not being worried about all the stuff that goes with being a head coach and all that. It's just focus up on that one job. I love them. I think they're great. Like, by the way, I should, you know, I'm a part-time Bath resident. You do know that. I do have a passport.
Declaring an interest. Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
Okay. I'm a Larkhall resident. It's the hipster side of Bath, isn't it?
My grandmother lived in Larkhall.
Yeah.
She didn't have much money either.
It's all changed down there now, Chris. All the hipsters are down there.
Apparently.
all the money here.
I hear them chatting. They're going like, what's this thing here? Oh, it's like a bus. Let's try it out. All changing now.
You mentioned the Russell Van Gran relationship, and you weren't alone in having your reservations about that. But I think a big part of those reservations were his signing came just after the Netflix documentary around the turbulence between Russell and Townsend. Obviously, that was the reason many of us had our worries, or a reason. Do you think that was also a reason as to why it's been such a success, in that obviously Finn Russell is changed in some of his, you know, the way he will behave and the way he operates in the team, but a coach may now be sort of primed with a marquee signing like that to go about that relationship in a certain way to avoid similar turbulence?
Yeah. He knows more about him, right? He knows more about Finn. He knows how to handle him. Johan Van Gran, we all know this. We all get to speak to him. He's a calm guy. He's a calm guy. I don't think he curses. I don't think anyone's heard him curse.
Yeah.
That's not his energy, right? And I think maybe Finn's learned a couple of lessons as well, you know. Maybe it's just the stars have aligned, right times in terms of maturity and all that kind of stuff. And I remember going to see Finn Russell second year at Racing, and I went out to interview him in his house. Okay, I'm not kidding. It was just on the outskirts of Paris. It's a beautiful house, very trendy inside, all concrete stairs and all that stuff. Finn Russell had a sofa, right? And then he had two large cardboard boxes. One was the box from his massive television, and then sellotaped to that was a box from his electric scooter, which was serving as a coffee table. And he had his TV, and he had his Xbox or whatever, PlayStation or whatever it was. And there was some baguettes. That's all that was in the place, right? I'm like, you're in Paris. He goes, yeah, I just pop on the e-scooter. I get some baguettes, maybe some cheese, and I come back here and play PlayStation all day. And I was expecting this kind of wild guy. And, you know, Simon Zebo will call up to him now and again to try and drag him out and do stuff. But actually, he wasn't the person I thought he was. Far simpler, very funny, with a love of rugby and a passion for rugby that people think because his manner on the pitch is this kind of laid back kind of dude. He loves the game and he's a student of the game. And we get confused by what we see and who he is, I think, sometimes. And maybe Van Graan's just tapped into that really cleverly and given him license to be himself. And they obviously have just a great communication and great relationship. I read I don't know what if you guys wrote it. There was a great article last week about just talking to different people about what it was like to try and defend against Finn Russell. Did you see this?
I don't think it was one of us, so but go on anyway.
It was just a brilliant, because all of them were saying you don't know what to do. Yeah. You don't want to rush him because he loves that. You don't want to back off because he loves that. He's so many tricks up his sleeve. He's playing to a plan, but you don't think he is because he confuses your brain, and you're left in a complete mess with him. I just think he's a fabulous rugby player, and Van Graan's allowing him to do that.
Yeah, his instincts are off the scale, aren't they? His rugby instincts. And you don't get many. You don't get many in a generation who can pretty much play it every which way. And because of his sort of the breadth of his rugby imagination, if you like, and the scale of his sort of tactical ambition, things will go wrong. You know, I mean, it could go wrong for him tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, but he's just one of those guys you want to watch play. I mean, he is. You know, he's not an Owen Farrell. Absolutely not. He's not a George Ford. There ain't many like him.
No,
there ain't many like him, and that's not to disparage the other blokes. They do wonderful things, but very differently. But this guy is box office because you really don't know what's coming.
But how
brilliant tomorrow to see him up against Finn.
So we were about to ask exactly the same question, Bren.
It's going to be fantastic to see that matchup tomorrow because this Northampton lad is a bit special as well.
Yeah.
And I think he's very different to Marcus Smith. I think he's very different to all the other England 10s, actually. He's got a little bit of Finn Russell. And what you notice with him, if something goes wrong, that's when he reduces his moments of brilliance, I think. And there's a bit of Finn Russell in that. So that's going to be box office tomorrow, that matchup.
He's got that thing, that cliched thing with the 10. He just looks like his time, doesn't he? But there's so much activity around Smith. There's just like, how many options does he have on a go forward ball? It's like there, go, like it's endless. Like sometimes you got to pause the screen and just go, hang on, how have they created this? Maybe after 2 phases, they create these insane attacking situations. They're so exciting, aren't they?
We've said this before on this podcast, but a lot of credit's got to go to Chris Boyd, whose initial work in developing the style we're seeing now was really impressive. And of course, it's always born of necessity. You know, he didn't think he had a pack of forwards that were going to win games for you. Yeah, now Northampton have strengthened up front, and it's pretty much helped by Courtney Lawes playing better and better and better season on season on season. He'll be a hell of a player in Pro D2 next year, I would think. But I like you. I love watching them play. They're absolutely wonderful, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Sam Vesti.
Yes,
because once Boyd's gone, you need someone who's going to build on that. And I wasn't completely convinced that Phil Dyson was going to build on it, not in the technical sense of developing an attacking game. He has other qualities, but he's not associated with that particularly. But Sam Vesti has come through really strongly as a big coaching figure in the Premiership, and the sky's the limit for him, I think.
How long can they hold on to Sam Vesti, I wonder? Surely England are sniffing around there. Has he coached? Has he done the 20s or anything like that at this stage? Is he involved?
I'm not sure, but you're absolutely right. His market value goes up with every week, and England probably need to strike if they're going to get him.
Yeah.
I mean, Finn Smith's gift is that ability when there's so much going on around him to actually pick the right option so often to open up defenses. I mean, and also he showed his temperament, as did the whole side really, in that win they had in Munster in the at Thomond Park in the European Cup, where they really had to come through the fire, and they did. And the drop goal that I think he clinched it with was a mark of his temperament.
Their running lines and depth of running is reminiscent of New Zealand rugby at its best, with a bit of French depth and timing about it. I mean, it's a hell of a mix. It's certainly unusual in Premiership terms to see a side playing at that level and with that sense of, it's what Brian Ashton used to say. It's not high risk rugby. Brian always used to say it's not risky if you get it right, which is a good get out for any coach. But you sort of knew what he meant. Nothing drove him more nuts than to be saying he's a high risk. He's been in a high risk game with England, or he's been in a high risk game with whoever. And he's saying no. He said this stuff is all possible if you do it right. And
don't you
work on the training field? And they've been brilliant at it. I hope they deliver tomorrow. It's not I hope Bath lose or anything. I just want to see Northampton play the rugby that graces the occasion, because they've been fantastic this year.
Their transition into attack is phenomenal. And it's like, it looks like it's just instinctive stuff, but it can't be. It's got to be rehearsed. But it's phenomenal. And it's just like that in a heartbeat. Suddenly, oh my word, it's on. I think
it helps when you've got somebody like Mitchell, mind.
Big time.
It's not just, the thing about it is that it's all connected. It's not just Mitchell. It's Furbank. It's Freeman.
Yeah.
All of
it's
these.
Yarno Augustus and those. I mean, that Leinster game when he suddenly woke up, game changed on him. Guy's a battering ram.
Yeah. No, they've got a lot of strings to their bow, and again, Smith is another one of those windfalls from those three clubs going bust, because he was at Worcester.
It's just like watching the Northampton of Tom Wood and Soani Tongawiya, isn't it?
That was a good pack that year. Wow.
They certainly had a pack. That's for sure.
Brian Mijati.
And Chris, we're talking about Phil Dowson, but that's one thing that I think that he's probably should take some credit for, is the way that he's tightened them up front.
Definitely.
And obviously Lee Radford defence as well. I mean, they're a team that have also come on a hell of a long way on a number of different fronts. But I mean, what sort of a signing has Curtis Langdon been?
Yeah, right. Amazing.
Really incredibly dynamic. And and Courtney, if he unleashes one of his old exocets on Russell,
folding people. Do you know what? It's been really impressive with them, because because we've seen really well-established kind of coaching panels and teams fail at this. Is when, like, they clearly recognized, and they brought in Radford, you got to improve your defense, and they really worked on it. And not just like structure, but a love of smashing people. And they never look like they're a team they're going to enjoy that. And suddenly their backline loves smashing people. But you improve your defense, usually your attack goes a little bit. Everything's just reached the same level. It's kind of rare, isn't it? Even with Sarries, when they try to improve their attack, the defense, it's always this business, the balance, right? But they seem to have got it really, really right, haven't they?
It was the Saints pack that won in the semi-final, because Saracens were up for it, weren't they? Big Star. And they were defending superbly against even the Northampton attack. But it was the Northampton pack which took them to the cleaners at the scrum.
Well, they did a job on them there, didn't they?
It was absolutely superb. I mean, a lot of people put their hands up that day for the Northampton pack. They'll have to do it again tomorrow, but slightly underrated, I think, as a tight pack. We know they've got strong, powerful runners and line-out people, but scrummaging and in the tight, they went really well.
6 scrum pens.
Pearson makes a difference as well. I think the Pearson Underhill little fandango tomorrow could be real fun. Very good.
Oh, Pearson was. I mean, he was so good at Irish for such a young fella. My word.
Yeah.
Only took me 10 minutes to mention London Irish.
Much lamented. We miss
lamented.
In more than 10 minutes there.
Once you've cut it down. Once you've edited
it. Felt like 10 minutes. Just before we move on from the Finn Russell completely, obviously they're similar-ish players in a way, and if you were to make parallels between Finn Russell and one of the 10s in the Gallagher Premiership, it will probably be Marcus or Finn in terms of the box of tricks that they have available to them. But Finn Russell, say he has a bad day tomorrow, his credentials are still very much, his stock is incredibly high. Finn Smith's stock is constantly rising. You'd make a case for him starting a test or two this summer for England. Some people are even saying tomorrow is a Lions test shootout. Obviously, Jack Crowley would have something to say about that. Marcus Smith might have something to say about that. Craig, what do you make of obviously very exciting to see him, but just how big a day is it in his career and his season, and the implications it can then have internationally and beyond.
In Finn Smith's,
yeah.
the door's open, isn't it? So you got to remember that the door's open completely when it comes to the England team. Are we agreed on that? No one's got their mind made up there, and he's in a position to walk through it. And he can't think about that. He can't think about that.
I'd say that George Ford, for me, if you said who's going to be starting against New Zealand in Dunedin that first test, George Ford will be starting. I don't think Borthwick, will tear up the script almost whatever happens tomorrow. But I also think that the idea that either of them will lose any sort of kudos from this season, because they've both performed magnificently for both their clubs this season, that whoever ends up on the losing side isn't going to suddenly, plummet out of any reckoning.
No. Do you even think if Mitchell starts at 9 for England, and if Smith plays out of his skin in front of 52,000 people against one of the most celebrated 10s in the world game at the moment, you don't think that does the job for him?
I'd give him pause for thought.
But this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying he'll lose stock, but currently Finn Smith is not England's starting 10.
Well, the only time we've seen him under real pressure, when he looked as though he was crackable, was in that Champions Cup semi-final.
But then he cooked.
And actually, they pulled through it and got themselves back in the game. But he had a rough 20 minutes or so.
But his 9 had a bad day.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting great service that day, was he?
Yeah.
No. His 9 at Leinster were good.
He was getting nailed by the Leinster back row.
Well, indeed. But, that happens to 10s, doesn't it? In the very big games, that can happen. And it's how you adapt. And actually, over time, he rediscovered his bearings.
And actually, just a little note on Finn Smith, that he's a tough boy. He's one of the biggest tackling 10s I've seen in a long while, English 10s anyway. And he seems to absorb all the sort of traffic as well. So he's not just a quality class player, but he's a very tough lad, I think. And I think we'll increasingly see that as he goes up the ladder. I don't think he's intimidated physically by anything.
And that's, again, that Saints coaching panel, they've made them all love tackling. They all love it. They love smashing guys.
That is a bit Saracens-ish. I mean, they are a little bit. They do seem to do it with an overt enthusiasm. They're all you can almost hear them shout, "Smash him, smash him, smash him." I mean, in the time-honoured Saracens way. I mean, they put a lot of pressure on Saracens with the rugby's form of the press. Did they not? I mean, they were a pain in the rear end without the ball in that semi-final, which is very impressive.
We put a microphone on TNT on Tommy Freeman a couple of weeks ago. The chat was extraordinary. Just like the tackles being celebrated, the shutting down players being celebrated. It wasn't the fancy stuff that was like grand, great try, but it was like just loving hurting people.
Do you realise, Craig, that if you'd used the microphone that Austin Healey would have been having, you'd have doubled your audience?
Oh, Austin.
I love him.
I love him.
Austin.
We're big fans.
I tell you, himself and Ben are commentating tomorrow. That's just great fun. That's just great fun.
Tell us this, because I think we know the answer, but when it comes to TMOs, how much, we all assume they're listening to the broadcast commentary.
Is there a question?
Well, it was a sort of implied question.
There's a sort of dot.
We were seeking confirmation, Craig.
As far as I know, the TMOs do not listen to commentary.
Okay.
But I don't know. And actually, okay, I'm going to throw something out. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So what if they are? Why not?
They should be. Because not more than the rest of them put together.
Extra set of eyes. Why not listen? You know what I mean? You still ultimately make, you still ultimately are going to make the decision yourself by looking at the video. So
Austin's got the best pair of eyes in the game.
The best pair of eyes in the game.
The best pair of eyes.
Worst hair in the game.
Yeah, dodgy
well,
shoes.
well, indeed.
Terrible shoes.
I mean, he must have had them stapled. He must have had his eyelids stapled when he was playing. But he has, bless him. He has. I think he's the best spotter in the game.
Yeah, he's brilliant at it.
I completely agree with you. I see no logic at all.
Yeah.
In the audience getting the benefit of what he's saying, but the people making the decisions not having that benefit.
Yeah, I think ultimately the commentators don't make the decision whether it's a penalty or a card or not. But if there's a lot for a TMO to get through there. There's a lot for the officials to get through. Obviously within reason, you wouldn't want them coming in too often. But yeah, I personally don't have a problem with it. But I just stand there and smile. I don't have to do that tough bit. I just have to stand there and get overexcited about stuff, particularly in January in the rain.
Craig, we had Matt Dawson on a couple of months ago, and probably one of the greatest stories we've ever had on this podcast. And you're the first guest we've had on since that works very closely with Austin.
I can confirm it's true, whatever it is.
Do you even want to hear what it is?
Yes, go on.
It was in the third test of the Lions series where Austin was on the bench and Dawson was starting. And I think Austin was told by to go on for number 15. And he goes down and asks he's asked who he's going on for, and he says number 9, Matt Dawson. And he subs himself on for Matt Dawson in the third test of the Lions series. So if you can just say it's true by presumption, great. I don't know if you've heard that story before.
I like it. It's true. I'll tell you. Matt Dawson's first live game for BT when we just started off. And I can't remember where we were, but there was some trouble at the club or whatever. There was behind the scenes. And he meant to say, don't forget. And we are like 10 minutes into our first ever live game. Everyone's a bit nervous. And he says, we shouldn't forget. What he wants to say was, we shouldn't forget about the undercurrent here. He didn't say undercurrent. He said under. A really bad word.
Yeah.
And everything, the world stopped. The world stopped. It was unbelievable. He just couldn't recover from it. Oh my word, I'll never forget it. Even better than when the much celebrated arrival of Brian O'Driscoll and the first European game we're live in Dublin, and it's hype. I'm giddy as a goat. Finally, I got a Dubliner on the team. I'm really excited. I'm like, right, brother, delighted. Brian O'Driscoll, the great Brian O'Driscoll, the celebrated players ever to have played the game, is joining us in commentary. Brian, you're so welcome. And it cuts to Brian like this. They forgot to fade up his microphone for the first 30 seconds. That's just absolutely. It's like how the mighty fall.
Joys of live TV.
Welcome to our world, Brian. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you pulled the plug out? Did you?
Yes, I could.
Craig, there's been a fair bit of traffic, hasn't there, recently about rugby broadcasting? I mean, there some big things have happened. I mean, that French deal, crikey, that's big bucks. And then we get the thing in the Telegraph in the week about some kind of Rugby Nations finals weekend in whatever it is,
Qatar, worth 800 million quid,
whatever it is. What's your take on where the broadcasting of the game is going at the moment?
It's been an interesting season on that front. I think it's kind of been like a season of rehabilitation, isn't it, for the league? And it obviously moved into TNT, and there was a few changes there, and I think everyone's been kind of refinding their feet a little bit. I think that's why I enjoyed the semi-finals so much. We finally just started loving rugby, loving this league. No league like it in the world. Like I'm in Ireland, right? We got Leinster and Munster and Connacht and Ulster, and we got the yours. There's nothing like the Premiership because of the backstories. Backstory, neighbours who don't like each other for hundreds of years. And when you see that, and you realise what this league is really all about, and you forget about all that stuff. And then we saw that in the semi-finals. I thought, actually, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay here. I miss Wasps. I miss London Irish. I miss Worcester. But I think actually the league has looked pretty good considering what it's been through. The viewing figures have been up 10%, I'm told, for the Premiership. Not sure about Europe. Not sure everyone's still buying into Europe or not. But I think it's actually done. I think it's done okay for us. But just from a business sense, you know, you talk about the money being down, and look, this isn't my area of expertise, and by any means, I'm reading the same stuff you're reading. You know, our writing. But why should the Premiership be worth the same as it was when there was 13 teams in it or 14 teams in it? You're not providing the same number of weekends.
Yeah, I think the only thing that is the elephant in the room really is promotion relegation, and the fact that this season you've had two clubs kicking along at the bottom of the league, which means that 40% of every weekend's fixtures are not at the pitch that they need really to be at. So that's the big issue for the Premiership. And we saw probably too many blowout games. And the great thing, as you say, about these semi-finals is that we really saw a balance between attack and defense, and they were compelling as a consequence. And that's what you want. And that's what you want, I think, in the league throughout. And the only thing that I'd say when you say that the Premiership is this good a league and so on and so forth, I think the top 14 is a better league for that reason, for the fact that it has promotion relegation, and there are definitely those rivalries there that go back 100 years or more, where they hate each other. So I do think, sorry, go ahead.
Well, all I'll say to you about that is, and I know where you're coming from on that, is, but I've done this. I did this recently to actually, I was having an argument with someone in a pub. Best place for an argument, I find, particularly later in the night. But I bored them by going through all the results over the course of this top 14 season. And I think there was 27% away wins away from home. So you're telling me there's a pretty good chance it's always going to be a home win? We don't get that in our league. So I know what you're saying. I think it's great and it's got all those elements, but there still is.
What's the balance in the Premiership? Do you know?
It doesn't suit my narrative to give that answer. I don't know, but I know I have seen a lot of losses. I've seen teams lose at home. I know teams like, Chiefs losing records at home. There have been losses at home, and you are surprised by results away from home. I'm less surprised with the top 14. I love the top 14. I really do. But in terms of competitiveness, I think the Premiership's probably still the best. The URC, I don't understand. There's quarterfinals coming up, and I can't get my head around the narrative of it at all. I don't know why. I'm wondering, is 10 teams in the Premiership making it easier the sight lines are easier because it's less? Is it? The URC just feels like this huge, big thing, and I can't quite get my head around it.
And it's still only at the quarterfinals. You've got another 2 weeks of it to go. I mean, it just seems to be never ending.
Also,
Look, the South African dimension's tough, isn't it? It is difficult because, hey, look, even in the Champions Cup, the Bulls send a second team for a quarterfinal. And that was, it's to me, and I mean, how much I love me rugby, but it's just that element that doesn't gel. And whether it does in time, I don't know. Whether we just all get used to it, etc., and the South Africans sort of adapt the way they do things, or the fixture list is adapted so that you don't have these one-off journeys, which are obviously very difficult. It's difficult to fly from Cape Town or Pretoria to Dublin or London for a game of rugby and fly home. Yeah. That is asking an awful lot in all sorts of measures.
If you were Benetton last Saturday, Chris, having moved up to 6th, it looked like they were going to be playing, I think at one stage, it's either Munster away or Leinster away. And then in the evening, the results went. And that would be what? fly to Dublin on Friday, Limerick on Friday. Suddenly, on Saturday night, it's balls away. And they've all got to get together on the Sunday, fly overnight, and acclimatise down to Pretoria by Monday night, Tuesday. It's impossible to run something like that long term, I think. That is so unfair on the team that has to do that.
And can you play your international rugby in one hemisphere and your club rugby in another? It doesn't make sense to me. And I see these guys in the airport sometimes after games on a Sunday morning when I'm going over, and they're not excited about the 3 flights home. Do you know what I mean? After the battering they're getting. Do you think the Sharks win in the Challenge Cup will change anything?
Little bit. I think it needed to that they needed to win that, or else I'd have been very pessimistic about how this was going. I think that might have pepped up a bit of interest down there. And of course, they could win the URC. Bulls are going to be there or thereabouts. There's no doubt about it. I think they'll beat Benetton, even though they're playing really well, Benetton. So that might pep it all up, but it needs a little bit of something to ignite it down there, I think.
It was post-match on the Challenge Cup night was so much fun, and the lads were in such good form. It was such a laugh, the celebrations. Even Etzebeth almost smiled at me at one stage, which was fun. But the lads were celebrating like they'd won the World Cup, and they have won the World Cup. They've had big days, and they genuinely enjoyed themselves. I was surprised. I was warmed by it. I was glad to see it.
Yeah, I think I did something like that. It was good to see them celebrate. It really was good to see them like they meant it.
You don't need to take any crap from Etzebeth. just to say, you'll see him around the back of the stand.
Tell you what I said to him, Chris, right? They want to do this opening where I'm walking through the stadium going, and this is this, and show and tell. Walk into the changing room, find Eben Etzebeth, and Steve Brandon, who's the floor manager for the ages, is overweight. But actually, Etzebeth just left the dressing room, and I bumped into him in a corridor, and we're live. I'm like, how are you? How's it going, right? And he wasn't buying into the paddy whackery at all. He was having absolutely none of it. And I had to throw to Martin Bayfield, who's doing an interview, and I'm like, I'm not loving this guy's attitude that much. And I said, before I leave you, even, I said, you're a big lad, aren't you? He goes, yeah. I said, how big are you? And he goes, I'm 6'8". I said, yeah, not so big. I know a bigger guy. Martin Bayfield, all yours. End of conversation. End of conversation.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. Look, it's
answer me this, Craig. When it comes to, I mean, you were talking about last week's semi-finals, and they were brilliant. It was a brilliant weekend. And we without blowing smoke in the proverbial direction, I think TNT or BT Sport, as it was, do a really good job on this stuff. Seriously, I think you've got good pundits. They say things when there's a story. You approach it journalistically, which is not always the case with broadcasters. It's easy to sweep some of this stuff under the carpet. So absolutely fair play. But every now and again, when you run into a real blowout, how do you maintain any? If you do, how do you maintain any semblance of interest? I mean, I remember at last World Cup, a broadcaster as good as Mark Pugach, and he's bloody good at what he does. But there were times at the World Cup when you were coming out, when you were having, I don't know, the All Blacks against Mothercare, whatever the game was, and it's 95-0 before kickoff. Yeah. And even Mark seemed a little bit weary of trying to make this thing out to be something it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how you approach this kind of thing. I mean, as you said, there's not that many blowouts in the Premiership.
No.
But you can smell one when somebody's named a second team, doesn't really matter to them. So is that a challenge for you as a broadcaster?
Yeah, I had a 6-3 last season, Newcastle Sale. They kicked the leather off the ball the whole night. And at that stage I went, look, I remember going, this isn't great, but at halftime I have a couple of recipes I might give you. And you just have a laugh about it. So years ago, before I really got big opportunities in sports broadcasting, I was watching the European Championships football, and there was a well-known panel, and it was Switzerland against Austria, I think, and it was lashing rain. It had been raining all day, and there was an inch of rain on the pitch. And the presenter went, hello, welcome. I'm not really sure why you bothered. It's been lashing rain. The pitch is a mess. And the two of the pundits were like, yeah, I mean, no one seems that interested. And Lee Dixon was on the panel. I love Lee Dixon. Loved him as a player. Loved him as a human being. Great pundit. And Lee Dixon goes, I don't know what you're talking about, lads. The ball isn't going to roll on this pitch. It's going to stop dead. They're going to be dealing with stuff they've never had to deal with before. They're going to be sliding. The slow-mos are going to look fantastic. And I would thank you, because I've sat down to watch this match and your colleagues have made me feel stupid for doing so. And Lee, you've given me a reason, and I'm going to stay with it. And I swore I'm never going to, I will find something in a game. There's always something in a game. There's someone back from injury. Someone may have had a tragedy in the time up to that point. Maybe we're just going to see some unbelievable tries scored. There's always something you can hang your hat on, and you make that decision. And I know it pisses some people off, being over enthusiastic or over positive, but you do have a choice. You go positive. Do you focus on a missed tackle, or do you focus on a brilliant sidestep? You decide. Yeah. And I will go with the sidestep unless I have to go the other way. And that's what you kind of, I will tend to do that. Now, sometimes they don't make it easy and you do have to call it as it is. But I watched a game recently, actually, and we were doing a game and the commentary were kind of slagging it off. And I was with Ugo and I was loving it. It was a brilliant tactical kicking game. There was great defense. You make your choice, you stick with it.
It's like,
I
realize I get too excited, if that's where you're getting.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, because I think it's a difficult area for broadcasters to hit absolutely the right note. I mean, you clearly don't want to be stood there saying things that are patently not entirely accurate about the quality of something you're watching. But there again, it's not really your role to say, why are you watching this? Switch over. Watch a Rishi Sunak press conference.
Well, I'll always say to the lads, I said, look, at halftime, the key to halftime is to say something that the people at home will repeat during the second half. So what Bath need to do in the second half is actually, attack on the fringes a little bit more, and then they'll get some headway in this game. And if they start doing that, and they say that at halftime, and they start doing that in the second half, and the people at home go, Brian O'Driscoll said they needed to do that, our job's done, right? Just give them a little bit of homework, some cog notes. Problem is when they say something at halftime and none of it happens in the second half, and it's a complete disaster, and there's no reference points, that's when you're in trouble. Yeah, and we do get the odd one of those, but we're lucky. I think we're lucky enough, aren't we? We don't get so many of them.
Yeah, not too many.
I enjoyed the homage to Lee Dixon, who it's like you knew that he was our podcast guest last week.
Was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh, I love Lee. What a great player. What a great
he was
guy.
Great guest as well. Really.
Yeah.
He's really generous, isn't he?
It's amazing that he's, Switzerland, Austria football pundit, and he was also scrum half for Northampton.
Still scrum half for Northampton, according to Peter.
This is the Arsenal fullback we're talking about.
I think it's the Arsenal fullback we're talking about, Oliver.
Yeah, I know.
Don't claim you were being funny. Don't.
I'm not getting that. I'll tell you what, it's reassuring that Cambridge University graduates are in a position of leadership still in this nation. It's
come back next month, and I'm sure that will no longer be.
I mean, two individuals who could not be further apart: Lee Dixon, the kind, gentle footballer, and Lee Dixon, the snappy, mouthy former Saints scrum half.
If you're any kind of a man, you will keep that in.
I absolutely will.
Resign.
I will also say I was making reference to the fact that Peter O'Mahony referred to Alex Mitchell as Lee Dixon.
Wow. You didn't go to Eton as well, did you?
No, God, no.
Oh, right, okay.
No. Just my sister's ex-boyfriend.
Oh, cool.
There you go. If my sister's listening, I apologize. Oh wow, this is we've had many tangents this episode. But
see that jersey.
That was the biggie.
Yeah. See that jersey there?
Yeah.
That was given to me by the Leinster bagman before the game. He goes, "Will you stick it on under your white linen blazer if we win?" Went straight in my bag. Only came out this morning. It didn't need to be worn.
Oh no.
I know.
Yeah. I think we've done everything Gallagher Prem wise. Craig, I know I said to you 45 minutes. And
you're okay. You're fine. You're fine. This is nice. Nice chat. I'm enjoying it.
Okay, well, if you need to get going, obviously do tell me. I want to find out what you've mentioned, some embarrassing career moments for Matt Dawson. You've mentioned an embarrassing one for Brian O'Driscoll. I'd like to find out what yours is. So if we could do our, the quickfire question section.
Yes, I'm just trying to remember. I mean, I've had so many.
Okay, good. Well, the more the merrier. We'll get going with those. So nickname.
Oh, I mean, it's Doyler, Doily. Nick Mullins calls me Craigo. And what's the other one?
Lee Dixon.
Lee Dixon. There is another one that's slightly more offensive.
Maybe save that for off air.
Yeah, no, I don't know. That's it. It's kind of dull, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Oh no, actually, no. I'll give you a nickname. You probably won't, Brendan. You might remember a guy called Neil Ryan. Played a little bit for Leinster, captain Trinity, lovely player, but just loved girls too much. Back row, he had everything. This guy looked like a French back rower from the 70s, unbelievable. But I went and played a season of rugby in Canada in a place called Bambi Beach. Rob Saunders had played there a couple of years before in the former Ireland school. So three of us went along and played a season of rugby in Bambi Beach. I was the worst of the three of us, obviously. And they're all these big meatheads. And the first training session, I said, I'll go in 9 instead of centre today. I'm going in 9. I'm snapping and shouting at people. And from the middle of a ruck, someone goes, "Well, somebody shut Screech up." Screech from the 80s TV show. Screech. So for the rest of my trip in Canada, I was known as Screech. Google Screech now if you're on this podcast.
Have you ever
as a result of this for the rest of your career?
I was going to say, have you ever publicly declared that your nickname was Screech?
Just now.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully that re-sticks then.
Yeah.
Come to resent this podcast for the rest of your days. Best career memory.
Oh, doing my first Six Nations game for the BBC, Ireland against Wales. I just couldn't believe I was working on the Six Nations. I just couldn't believe it. And I did a report from the James Joyce Tower down in Sandy Cove talking about Wales, and I just kind of went for it. And then to appear live on a Six Nations match was just like, what? I couldn't believe it had happened. Other sports, interviewing Tiger Woods on the 18th at the Open. And I'd followed him around all day. And, he used to have his 4 Nike security guards, do you remember, in a little kind of pincer movement around him and these crowds. And I was following other golfers, and they might have 1,000 people max, but he had thousands of people. So I'm doing this interview with Tiger, and I said, Tiger, can I just mention, I said, the crowds around you, the gallery around you, it's constant. I said, do you know it's not like that for everyone else? And he stopped and went, really? I said, no, really, it's really not. Some people have 50 people, because I've never seen anything else bar that. And I said, it's not like that for everyone else. And we got into a really interesting chat. And it was a really nice interview live on BBC One, middle of the Open on a Saturday. And then off the back of it, Sam Torrance went, that's one of the greatest interviews I've heard with Tiger Woods. Well done, young man, right? And I was like, cock of the walk. So Barbara Slater said to me the next, because we're giving you Tiger again tomorrow. So yes, because Tiger and I are tight now. And my first question was, Tiger, great round again. No, so it was before he went out, I think. So it must have been the Friday interview. This was the Saturday then. I had him. Tiger, another good round today. Where would you rather be though, Tiger? Would you rather be the pressure of being the leader? Would you rather be in a shot 2 behind? And he goes, what do you think? I want to be 10 shots clear walking up the 18th with a win in the bag. And I went back to Sam Torrance and goes, not so good this time. He won't be asking that again. There I learned the highs and lows of broadcasting. But no, that was cool. I had a cool moment in the Triathlon World Championships in Hamburg some years ago where I got into triathlon. I wanted to learn about, they wanted me to cover it. So I joined a club in Ireland and I started training, I started racing, and I ended up getting on the Irish age group team for the World Championships the following year in Hamburg. And my link to the race I did as I crossed the finishing line in the age group race. And I thought, that's cool. That's a cool thing.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, my dad was alive then, and he just Like I'm terrible at sport. Like I run like a duck. And one of my other nicknames, Duck Boy. So to do that was cool. Yeah, to wear your crest and all that.
What
was
have we
cool.
got? Screech, Duck Boy.
Yeah.
Anymore?
And
Lads
that's
to lads.
really boring.
Duck arse. I get duck arse as well. Chris, you got one there? Are you brewing one?
What for you?
Nickname? Yeah, you look like deep in thought.
No, I don't. I don't really like nicknames, Screech.
Most embarrassing career memory.
Oh, this week? They happen so often. That Tiger Woods one was really embarrassing. I have a non-sporting one.
Go on.
Is that okay? I was a young. I studied journalism in a place called the LCP in London. My first job was in BBC Suffolk, and first month in, they told me to go and interview the then Transport Minister Brian Mulwiney, who was really scary. And it was something to do with the privatization of railways, of which I didn't understand. And so I had this interview with Brian Mulwiney, who was just towering over me in this big glaring kind of face, and is scary. And I went, "So, Minister, I mean, what do you have to say to those people who are concerned about the privatization of?" I can't even remember the question, but I accused him of having privatized lots of things which he hadn't, and he just went, "I haven't privatized anything yet, young man. You can leave now." Was the end of the interview. One question in the exclusive.
I mean, I've asked some stupid questions on this podcast, but it's
nice. Just a minute ago. The Lee Dixon thing.
Well, yeah, but the nice thing is you can hide behind a Zoom camera. How old were you when this happened, and how did you sort of from tail between your legs?
It was awful. That took weeks. Like I did loads. It's such a great place for young wannabe journalists out there to go to their local BBC stations and our local newspapers, because you can make mistakes and generally not get sued. But I should have been sued a lot. I mean, the things I said on air, the reports I wrote, that were just so wrong. I mean, I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't helped by the fact my brother was a very good journalist and was the BBC's political correspondent for Northern Ireland for about 9-10 years. So they all thought I was going to be as clever as him. No. No. So you just crack on. You crack on. I think what happens now is, sadly, and I'm going to sound like an old man now, but we're just thrusting people in front of cameras without even thinking about it. And they make mistakes, and some of them don't recover, and it's the end of their careers. And you should be able to make your mistakes and to a smaller audience. But these days, it's caught, it's out there, it's viral, and it's horrendous for them. I don't envy them. I felt really lucky to start where I started.
Yeah, it's a bit like Lee Dixon. It's caught and it's viral. Anyway, I mean, actually, it's just occurred to me, if I was going to give you a nickname, Craig, it'd be Sherpa, because you spent so much time on Everest.
I'm glad that's why you call me Sherbert. They went bust. Bust last month.
So Wasp, Worcester, London Irish and Everest.
And Everest, yeah.
Everything you touch, Craig.
Yeah, only one of those things is going to affect my children's school fees.
Sorry, I'm interrupting again.
No, that's okay.
Pre-game tune. This could be back in your playing days.
Oh, yeah. Good one. First senior game I played, I went to a school called Blackrock College, which produced loads of really good rugby players and loads of really bad rugby players. And I was the latter. So it's only when I went to college that I started playing anywhere half decent. I still wasn't good, but they showed me how to do things. So I got a little bit better. And I used to play with this guy, Neil Ryan. I played in the centre with a guy called Dave Sanfey. I think he played a bit of rugby league for Ireland, actually. Big unit of a fella. There's my electrician. Thanks, Rob. He doesn't live here. I don't constantly have electrics being fitted. He was doing a job. But he used to make me listen to U2 Bad. That's what we used to listen to. And Led Zeppelin, Battle of Evermore. So let's go with Led Zeppelin, Battle of Evermore. But he used to headbutt me. That really hurt.
Is that why you weren't very good? Just going into
No, I wasn't very good because I had no talent. I could pass. I could pass and kick, nothing else.
Led Zeppelin were a rock band, Ollie.
I know that. Thank
all
you. Thanks, Chewy.
Led by the brilliant voice of Lee Dixon.
The Arsenal fullback. Cheers, lads. Post-game meal.
Pints.
Whether you played or broadcasted.
Well, when I played in college, they grabbed 3 or 4 of us and they asked us to leave the college team and play for a club close to us called North Kildare. I don't know if you ever come across North Kildare Rugby Club. It's
No.
Will Connors is North Kildare, Devon Toner, North Kildare. So we went and played for them, and they gave us a book of like raffle tickets, right? And they were our pints for the week, okay? And you'd give a raffle ticket at the bar, and you get your pint. But also, it's sheep farming country, so they slaughtered a lamb for us, right? And they helped out with our student accommodation in this house. So on a Tuesday, I go train. They go, "What's it going, Craig?" And I go, "We'll just have a load of chops and one of those legs." And on a Thursday, they'd give me the meat. And then we'd play our matches, only Sunday matches. We played, I think, a competition called Towns Cup and Hosey Cup. And you play that, and then we go back and burn the lamb.
Yeah.
Nothing else, no vegetables, a flagon of cider, and just meat. Yeah. And then, but you see, I don't know if they still do it. Like they used to get these just vats of soup and stuff after matches. But when my dad played in St. Mary's Rugby Club in Dublin, and my fondest memory as a kid was after all their matches, no matter what, there'd be a vat of crew beans, which were pig's trotters, just boiling away. And we'd go into the club after the matches, and one of those, do you remember those orange plastic rugby balls that if you kicked the end of it, you'd break your foot? And you get red lemonade with your rugby ball, and you get a pig's trotter. And that would be my favorite thing.
Right.
Did you lads not eat that stuff?
No.
No, I don't. There's not much call for pig trotters in Bath, Craig.
More French thing. I remember seeing Philippe Saint-André eat about 5 of them in a row.
Oh.
And he was known as the Piglet, wasn't it?
He was known as
He
the
was.
Piglet. Right.
He was known as a pig.
Why?
Was he? Why was he?
That his nickname.
The Piglet.
Yes.
Screech don't seem so bad right now.
That's not bad at all.
Can I ask your nicknames?
Oh, mine's bad.
God.
Yours is God.
No.
Oh,
No.
we're in trouble.
Wait,
we all call you Chewy. Do you like Chewy?
I don't really care.
Oh.
I mean, I find nicknames infantile.
Right. I mean, ours are very boring, actually. I'm trying to think of the best nickname we've ever had. The best nickname we've ever had was probably Andy Christie, so none of you were there for it. And his was Nova, but he could only tell us why it was Nova after we went off air. So I'll have to leave that one up to the imagination.
We're in the same boat.
Oh,
Yeah, Craig's in the same boat as
That'll
well.
be fascinating for the listeners, Oliver. Well done. Yeah, very good. The best nickname I ever heard was the Gloucestershire cricketer Paul Remains, whose nickname was Human.
Nick, I would call you Magnum Light.
Very kind. The one that I've got
Light.
is Moose, and that's a legacy from Stephen Jones, who was called it by somebody else and thought that he needed to share it around.
I had a colleague on The Independent called David Llewellyn, whose nickname was Harpic because he drove everyone round the bend.
Best player. This one's I've had to change this one because of the wording of it. Best player you've ever sort of commentated on or broadcasted over. Ability.
Oh.
Wow. Up until recently, it would have been Brian O'Driscoll. But I think Antoine Dupont in that final it was the most. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I think that's the greatest performance I've ever seen. And it wasn't even for scrum half duties.
No, he was
There's all this other stuff he did. I'm like, how are you doing that? How's he doing it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the next weekend, he went and won the sevens for France.
Oh, the guy's a joke.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did anyone see the clip of him? I think it was Robbie Ferguson of GB, who's twice his size, and he
the handoff, the
picked
piston
him
handoff.
up and basically choke slammed him like full Undertaker. Yeah, you're right. He does know things. He does things no staff has a right to do. Favorite player you've worked with? That could be interviews post game, or actually, I suppose those are the best examples.
This is going to get me into trouble, right? I love all our crew. Like, they're all good friends. I think they're brilliant. I think Sam Warburton has been an unbelievable addition. I mean, he's just the nicest. How has he survived in rugby being that nice? He never gets annoyed. The first time he was on TNT, he was wearing these chinos, and I thought, that's very brave. So we get a 10-second go, Craig, going live in 10, 9, 8, and there's a countdown to when we're in vision on 0. And on 6, I wet my finger and I just stuck it on his leg, on his chino, so it looked like a little pea dribble. And as we went, hello and welcome, a big welcome to Sam Warburton, knowing he had this patch on his leg. Anyone else would have clobbered me, but no. Oh gosh, I loved interviewing Sebastian Chabal. I just loved it. And I loved interviewing him after Six Nations games, because I go, how can I have a word? And he goes, sure, no problem. French or English? Go English. He was fab, wasn't he? Just so much charisma. And you never knew what he was going to say. Alex Sanderson these days. I really listen to him when he talks. And you never know where he's going to go with an interview. And he means it. Like, he 100% means it. And all the others that I have to interview in the future.
Favorite player right now? You may have already said it.
Okay. I'm going to go. So in the Premiership, my favorite player right now.
Okay.
It's a bit left field. I'm going to go Sam Dugdale of Sale Sharks.
Dugdale.
Nice. Any further words?
Sam
Dugdale.
Sometimes there's a player who just epitomizes what the club's all about. And I remember when he started playing, when he was finally, I'd say he was there with Steve Diamond. He was on 30 grand a year, I'd be surprised. And he was getting to play for his boyhood club. And now he's a starter and he's keeping other lads off. And every single week, I've never seen him have a bad game.
Yeah,
he's not going to, he just does stuff. He tackles, he clears out rucks, short carries. Not quite a Jean Klein World Cup 2015, 5 carries for -1 meter, but he's not, it's phenomenal. And he just has the spirit of Sale. I think Sale Sharks are a very special rugby club. And I think I just love seeing him out there.
I think that's
another Sam like that, Sam Dickinson of Northampton, when they won the Premiership last time. And he's still playing for Cordy. He's about 44, I think. And he was exactly the same player as Sam Dugdale. They could clone them.
Yeah.
Well, the great example of that kind of, who knows where Dugdale's career will go? But one of the blokes I had ultimate respect for in the Premiership was Jackson Ray.
Yes. Yeah.
To me, there was an embodiment of the Saracens' spirit. And very often, he was the one guy in that starting lineup who wasn't an international. The only bloke. And never was he the worst performer in a Saracen shirt ever. It was just, and I just thought he was, he embodied the Premiership.
Yeah, he did.
He was a fantastic figure. I had ultimate respect for him. I thought he was brilliant.
Did he have to take a kick in that penalty kick comp in Europe?
I don't know.
Leicester.
I don't have to think.
Leicester against Cardiff, was it?
No, he didn't. Yeah, it was Leicester against Cardiff. He didn't take one, no. But Jordan Crane, who looks a little bit like him, did.
We had him been talking about it, didn't we?
Yeah, another podcast guest from the past couple of weeks.
Actually, this brings you to my favorite nickname then.
Oh God,
Jordan Crane's Pick and Slow.
He didn't mention that one, funnily enough.
Pick and Slow.
I do remember as a joint nickname when Adam Eustace and Andy Hazel were playing together for Gloucester, and they were known as Dustpan and Brush.
Oh dear. How 25 minutes into a quickfire question section, we're still on question one. We're still coming back to question one. Rugby idol, Craig.
Tony Ward.
Nice.
Tony Ward.
Ooh.
And I told him, I know, like, are you a Tony Ward house or a Ollie Campbell house? And it was difficult in our house. It really was. But Tony Ward, because he was a great footballer as well, soccer player as well. But Tony Ward, I wanted to be Tony Ward. I told him I played golf with Tony Ward recently, and he's a terrible golfer. And I didn't want him. I'm like, I can't cope with you being bad at something. You're meant to be good at everything.
How bad? What did he shoot?
It was pretty bad.
3 figures?
It's pretty bad.
Okay.
It's one of those when he get the ball goes in the air and you go, aren't you great? It's one of those. Yeah. He has a Celtic cross on his arm. No, it's a 2, which I thought was quite cool. But what a great bloke. Yeah.
He was so bad that he had a Tiger Woods sized gallery by the end.
Or just people playing behind.
I remember as a kid, there was a Blackrock kind of Jubilee rugby tournament down in the school, senior rugby thing, and all the clubs from around Dublin and Ireland, loads of them were there, and Blackrock played Old Belvedere in the final, and Belvedere lost with Ollie Campbell at 10, and as he walked off, and I would have been like young, I would have been 12, and as he walked off, I went, ha ha, right, ha ha, and he grabbed me and lectured me. It's like Ollie Campbell lecturing me. I will never. There's my most embarrassing moment in life right there. It took me a while to get there.
We got
that was
question
bad.
One's question 2.
That was bad.
Favorite? Where are we? Favorite stadium?
The Wreck.
Favorite gym exercise?
Bench all day. Who doesn't love bench?
Is that everyone on the TNT's team's favorite?
No, I'd say Sam Warburton would be curls.
Okay.
Brian O'Driscoll would be wide grip chin-ups. Ben Kay would be burpees. Austin Healy would be counting cash.
Yeah. A sort of thumb exercise.
Yeah, thumb exercise. Yeah. Martin Bayfield rowing, but he doesn't. His toes keep falling off. He can't train in the gym anymore. He really can't. Ugo doesn't need to go to the gym. He's just massive. He's just muscly. And he's young. He's in his 30s. He doesn't need to do anything. But in about 4 years,
Mullins.
the airbags. Yeah. Nick Mullins once said to us, yeah, sorry guys, I was lifting tin, and it took about a week to recover from laughing at that. So no, he walks waffle.
Once did the London Marathon though. Fair play to him.
Did he?
Yeah. I think his doctor told him he needed to or something get fit, but he did. Yeah, he ran the London Marathon.
Nick Mullins. Do you think he's ever lifted a weight?
He does some plucky work with the elbow, to be fair.
He gardens. I'd say he wears a gardening hat as well. Oh, Ali Eakin started working out, and I'd say that's aggressive. I'd say Ali Eakin in the gym is intense and aggressive.
I can so imagine all of you before a quick broadcast just getting a little, you're doing your bench press, Bod's doing his pull-ups, Warbs is doing his curls, just making sure you prime for the cameras.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Christmas just the last Christmas party before COVID. And so BT organised, they'll kill me for telling this story, it doesn't really matter. It's on me anyway, so it doesn't matter. So they had organised a dinner somewhere in town, I don't know, 7 o'clock dinner. And Austin said, that's great, 7 o'clock dinner, we should probably meet at 12. So we met in some restaurant in town at 12 or half 12, and it was ridiculous. Poor old Sarah Elgin, all she had was chicken nuggets. It was like, I think it was called Novikov, expensive Mayfair sushi thing. She wasn't eating any of that. Austin had us playing drinking games with the cheapest white wine they had, which was like 60 quid a bottle. We all get completely smashed, and the lads are giving me a bit of a hard time. And then we have to get into the taxi to this dinner, and I'm there with Ben and Austin and Ali and just all the English lads, and they're giving me some Irish jip. And I looked at them, and I was sitting facing them, and I looked at them, and I just went, "You English bastards!" And I smacked one of them a punch, and then this huge fight broke out in the back of this taxi. Some might say a fun fight, but it was a fight all the same. And this is where Ben Kay's dangerous. He's just sitting there and he's just like snapping. And every now and again, my head would flick back. So it would flick back like that. And that's all grand. And we get out of the taxi and we're laughing our heads off. It was a bit old school and immature. I realized that. That was on the Thursday. The next night we're doing a match somewhere and I turn up. And of course, the eyes closed and the nose is cut. And Chris, who's been our long-suffering makeup artist, just like, what happened to you? I said, Ben Kay beat me up. Ben's just smiling at me. So how did I get to that?
But Martin Johnson subsequently said that you were the first person ever to lose a fight to Ben Kay.
I was fighting like 4 guys, so I'm just saying. I love those fellas. I love those fellas.
Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
Chef.
Nice. So you sharing recipes, there is actually some knowledge behind that.
Yeah. He's got a nice one for pigs trotters.
Yeah, if you got a legless pig, it's me. So I always cooked since I was a kiddie.
No.
My dad always cooked, bizarrely, but like weird stuff. He'd bring home some weird stuff. He owned a garage. Once served John Wayne. Frankfurt Motors and Dundrum.
With what?
Yeah, what did you cook?
Petrol. He owned a garage. John Wayne came in filming. I don't know what they're filming. It's the garage, and he paid. It wasn't on a horse, like.
Oh, petrol. You gave him petrol.
John Wayne came in on a horse.
On a horse drinking milk.
I was going to say, it must have been a bloody big plate.
Get off your horse and drink some milk. Get off your horse and pay for the petrol, John. Yeah, my dad had the first automatic car wash in Ireland, and it made the front page of the Irish press. But John Wayne was one of his customers. But people used to bring Dad weird stuff, so he'd bring home like weird stuff and we'd cook it. So I got quite into it. So I think that's what I would have done. Yeah.
Superstitions.
Oh, there's many. Before I do anything that makes me, this is a weird one. Before I do anything that makes me nervous, I used to do it when I was playing. I said like playing sport. I wasn't good, so I needed superstitions. But I'd have to have a pee just before we ran out of the pitch or the court or track or whatever it was, and I'd have to drop a spit down through the middle of my pee.
That is very Chewy's.
Nick Cain, stop psychoanalyzing me, Nick.
Chewy's bloody nodding along as if that's a
well, no, that's quite a common thing, especially in Bath. Especially in Bath, we do it all the time. I mean, seldom's the time in Lark Hall when somebody's not spitting through their own pee. How weird is this?
This is taking a really weird.
Gradually further off the wall.
Yeah, that's weird. I realise as I said it.
Craig, what's the rugby law you would change?
I'd allow dominant scrums play out before blowing the whistle. Let them do their job. Let them just keep going. I noticed that in Europe this year in the early stages, some referees were letting them go before blowing the whistle. But like you have your scrum's better. Well, let them use it. You know what I mean? And then, especially if they go for 3 or 4 resets and just by luck, the opposition gets one because a prop slips. It really annoys me. It's like, that's so clearly a dominant scrum. And also the scrum is the heart and soul of the game, isn't it? And your scrum is dominant. All the shock of waves of that, sucking in defenders, back-footing defenses, all these things it's meant for. And I think the laws have taken the prime power out of a scrum. I don't think it's just a
I have
restart.
a feeling Stade Francais lost a Challenge Cup final to Harlequins with exactly that. They would steamrolling forwards at the death, had penalty try written all over it or pushover try written all over it. And they did a very quick use to lose it. And Parise went nuts. Yeah, went out and dead right as well.
Yeah, dead right. Particularly, your scrum's suffering like that, and your back row, you can't break. You got to stay in there as long as possible. There's space created. It'd be better for the game.
It's so random, isn't it? I mean, different referees let things go for slightly different times, but there's nothing in the sort of great majesty of the rugby law which says that a pushover try or an attempt at a pushover try is not permissible. So it just seems to be a completely random thing.
Is it safety reasons? What's the reason for it?
I mean, this use it. When you're on a dominant scrum and you're just going forward nice and steadily, you can take as long as you want. If you've got that sort of dominant scrum, you can take 30 seconds as far as I'm concerned. As long as it's not skewing, going up. If that's your thing, if you're Georgia of old or Argentina, do it. That's your game.
Yeah, I agree.
Lastly, we've got to question 15. Best thing about working in rugby. And don't say the nicknames, because then we're back to the start again.
People. It's always been people. Since I was like 6 years old, it's been people.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, like all the good memories of being a kid were at the rugby club at St. Mary's or Blackrock, wherever club we're in. Any bad news, like, I remember my dad having to tell us about an infant losing our infant sister, daughter, and it happened at the rugby club because that was his safe place. The rugby club was always the safe place. And things haven't always gone swimmingly for me in broadcasting. I went to the Olympics 20 years ago in Athens. It was a disaster. I got panned. But once I got back to rugby, it got safe again. All the good things in my life, careers, friendships, family, have been around a rugby club. So it's always just people, special people. Even you bunch of layabouts.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a barrel to be scraped somewhere, isn't there?
Oh, God. Well, Craig, I think this is episode 113 of the Rugby Paper Podcast. That is by a million miles the longest quickfire question section we've ever had.
But one of the best.
That's how I'd like to be remembered. The longest one.
The short one and the best as well. So thank you for doing that. Guys, there are 2 more things that were on my list of essentials for today. The first, I think let's do we need to say something about Rob Burrow. This is our first podcast episode since the news broke of his passing. I think it was June 2nd now. So we are slightly late to it, but we've got to talk about him. We haven't ever done much rugby league coverage on this podcast. Obviously here it's very much necessary. I get you guys have obviously been in the game much longer than me. Have any of you had many encounters with Rob himself?
No, other than I remember him being a particularly feisty, tough nugget of a player. I mean, he really was a dynamite. And I can only imagine that sort of vitality and sort of engine is part of the thing that has kept him going for so long with this horrible disease. He was just fighting it. He was quite a small guy, and I know rugby league isn't a game of giants, but he was quite a diminutive guy, and he was just tough as hell, and he showed it right to the end. And if you judge a man by the friends he makes, and people like Kevin Sinfield, you'd have to say that he was incredibly admired and liked throughout the whole game of rugby. Forget rugby league, obviously, primarily, but everybody in rugby union got behind him. With their own heroes like Doddy and people who fought for Doddy's foundation. So very sad, but very inspiring as well.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I mean, look, rugby league means nothing to me. I don't enjoy watching it. I don't watch it. I have no interest in it, and anyone who's ever read any of me stuff on the subject, which won't be very many, will know that I'm just broadly uninterested. However, you have to say that the guy's been a complete inspiration, and the people around him have been a complete inspiration. It's a remarkable story and incredibly touching, incredibly uplifting in what is a real bleakness, you know. And if you can manage that, if you can extract that amount of spirit out of something so grim, then whether you like the game he played or not, it's entirely irrelevant. It's a remarkable figure.
I was lucky to interview him quite a lot over the past couple of years. Once he was diagnosed and he started campaigning and raising funds alongside Kevin. And even when he lost the Paris speech, I met him at the Pride of Britain Awards, which was just a few months ago. And you could have a perfectly good chat with him, and his eyes, he'd respond with his eyes, you know, and he'd just make a little grin and just the eyes. But his wife, Lindsay, I mean, Kevin's been unbelievable, I know that, but his wife, Lindsay, who has been by his side with the kids at everything together, outstanding, out just leaning into it, the whole family all the time. The bravery from that family unit, move you to tears. Unbelievable people. Unbelievable people.
Yeah. Did you get to meet Lindsay as well?
Yeah, lovely person. Just her spirit, keeping her spirit up. You think the things she's having to manage here, her husband with this illness, the kids, everyone knows what's going to happen next. But her spirit and positivity, but acceptance, not in a kind of fake way, like this, a realism to them. It's very hard to articulate it, but it was deep and brilliant and meaningful and just, yeah, an incredible family. Those kids, wow, they are strong. They're really strong. Yeah.
We always got a window into it, didn't we? Because obviously with MND, obviously photos would surface of what Rob or videos, and you could obviously visually see the effect that the disease was taking on him. Lindsay was always by his side with the same smile on her face. And you do wonder, obviously people put it up, you know, show strength for the cameras and things like that. But even to be able to do that, when, like you say, you know what's coming, I think is just an incredible show of strength. So yeah, well, it sounds like you were incredibly lucky to meet both of them and the kids as well.
Yeah, you know, when Doddy was alive, Doddy did a big fundraiser it was the last time I saw him in Dublin. One of you guys might have been there, I'm not sure. I'm going to say, when is Doddy gone, a year?
A bit longer, I think.
A bit longer. So it might have been even 3 years ago. And Doddy was on static. He was creaking big time at that stage. He didn't have a grip or anything like that. And we got to the end of the night, and Keith Wood was there, and Doddy and Kathy, Doddy's wife, were there. And he was like, "What you want to do?" And he goes, "Pint." And we went into O'Donoghue's on Baggett Street in Dublin, and the place is hopping, it's rammed. And Doddy walks in, and the path just clears, and people just leave an area by the bar, and they put this giant of a human being up in the seat, and they get him a pint of Guinness. And I had a pint of Guinness, and Woody had a whiskey because he has to be different. And he sat there and had this pint with Kathy again alongside him. You know, we look at the individual who's suffering, but they're partners.
Yep, that's right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Incredible people. Yeah. Bloody hell. Awful illness, huh?
Yeah.
Shocker.
He was 5'5", Rob Burrow, 70 kilos.
Nothing of him.
No, not much.
As a player.
No, but in terms of his impact, obviously stratospheric. Yeah, I mean, only thing for me, obviously, I'm not in as good a place to speak as you guys, is if you haven't watched the message, that I think the BBC were the first to put it out, of Rob's message to leave once he's gone. It is definitely worth watching, because that as well. Yeah, thank you for doing that, guys. And I know, ending on a very jovial podcast on a little bit of a sorrow note, or note of sorrow, but definitely a necessary thing to do. The other essential thing on my list was to get predictions from everyone. Just on the Gallagher Premiership Final, I was going to do URC quarters, but this episode's coming out to 2 hours and kickoff isn't waiting for the Rugby Paper.
It's okay. URC be still going in about a month. You'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Craig, you can come back on.
I predict that the URC will one day end.
You might be wrong again, Chewy.
Well, I've been wrong before. I was wrong last week.
You are. Well, we'll start with you then. Who are you backing, Bath or Northampton?
I think Northampton. If both sides play to their level, I think Northampton win the game, not by any great distance, because I think Bath's defence, as we've been talking about previously, has improved out of all recognition. But I do think that Northampton have the X factor game to ask Bath a couple of questions they won't be able to answer. So I take them to win, inside 10 points for sure.
Craig.
Sorry, the line's breaking up terribly. I can't. I'm a Chewy on this one. I think Saints are just a little bit further down the line on their journey, etc. And I think by an edge, but we're going to see this Bath team competing in these finals for a few years to come.
Yeah. Is anyone going Bath to be different, or are we going full house of Saints? Because I'm going Northampton.
Saints. I think Courtney is surfing a career wave at the moment. The stars are aligning. I hope I'm not putting the knockers on him. And I think somehow he'll find a way for Saints getting over the line. Just one other thing I'd say. I think the refereeing in the last month, in the big matches, has been brilliant the last month. And I hope that continues tomorrow. I'm not sure who is reffing tomorrow, but the officiating has been superb and helped make. Is it? I think Chris, he's doing brilliantly at the moment. I think it's Ridley. All England's top refs are absolutely bang on form.
Yeah, he'll be bloody good when he hits puberty, won't he?
Reffing well. And I just hope that the ref has a good match, because if the ref has a good match, it will be a belter, an absolute belter.
Brendan's audio cut out there, so apologies.
No, it didn't. He was doing the whole because it was a prediction.
I think Brendan.
Northampton to win. Should have been
Northampton to win. Christoph Ridley to have a good day. Go for Bath to be different.
I'm going to make it a full house for the Saints, but it's one of those finals which I think it will be very, very close. I think it's in Saints' favour, really, because they're I think, as Craig said, they're further down the track in terms of their teamwork, in terms of just in terms of their ability to get over the line, I think. But I think that Bath will take them to the wire. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw another final go to extra time as well. I don't say Northampton with huge confidence, but I think that they'll do it just.
I was going to say the fact that all five of us have gone Saints, I think, probably undermines just how close this final is. So yeah, definitely not ruling out extra time for sure. Okay, Northampton clean sweep. Craig, enjoy tomorrow. What time are you heading down?
I'll be there for like 10 in the morning. Yeah, we got to do the influencers. Social media you got to. It's a good. We do it well. When we say we do that, I stand there while everyone else influences. But that's what we have to do.
What are we talking about now?
Chris, have you never had to deal with any social media influencers?
No, no. One of the glories of the Independent closing when it did, which was inglorious, in and of itself, but at least it saved me, because I wouldn't be able to get away with it now. But I got through a whole back end of a sports writing career, not simply not doing any of it. and I still don't do any of it.
No harm.
Which what makes me so well informed about it. I mean, it's exactly the kind of thing that stops you confusing Lee Dixon with Lee Dixon.
That wasn't what happened.
Wait the edits.
No, I tell you what, I'm getting rinsed on this podcast with increasing regularity. But maybe I'll try and take that as a good sign. Craig, thank you so much for giving us not just your time, but so much of it as well. Real privilege to be a part of. And yeah, just enjoy tomorrow. I hope, you're watching it as a neutral, I know, but we look forward to watching it as neutrals with you at home. And yeah, massive thank you again.
No worries.
Stay in touch.
And please try to get a bigger pee stain on Sam Warburton's. that would be really. I'll be looking out for it.
Yeah. And as you're doing it, spit through the middle.
Well, exactly. Yeah. In true Bath fashion. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have Sam. I don't have Sam tomorrow. I got Brian O'Driscoll, who'll be wearing his old school pants. I got Danny Kerr, tight. They'll be tight. And Ugo Monja could be in anything.
Yeah.
So,
and once they've listened to all 2 hours of this podcast this evening, they'll know what you're about.
Yeah.
There you go.
They'll all turn up in a suit of armour.
Yeah, exactly.
Lads, I've had a lovely time. You're a great bunch of blokes, and I've always loved chatting to you. And what a lovely thing to do today. So thanks for inviting me on. I enjoyed it very much.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.